Tensions in Ukraine show little sign of abating. Pro-Russian separatists in the east of the country continue to occupy state buildings, and the United States is set to impose further sanctions on Russia. Parallels are inevitably being drawn between the situation today in Ukraine and the former Yugoslavia in the early 1990s. Joining me now to talk about it is our Europe editor, Tony Barber. Now, Tony, you covered the Balkan Wars. Do you see parallels between then and now?
There are some parallels, but I wouldn't take them too far. One obvious parallel is that the dissolution of communist Yugoslavia at the beginning of the 1990s and the dissolution of the Soviet Union each produced large numbers of ethnic Serbs in the case of Yugoslavia, ethnic Russians in the case of the Soviet Union, that lived outside their new mother countries of Serbia and Russia, and they had a strong desire to form as close possible relations with the mother country, even going to the extent of creating a greater Serbia or a greater Russia. But whereas Slobodan Milosevic, the Serbian leader in those times, never went so far as to actually announce the creation of a greater Serbia, he limited it to setting up rogue little Bosnian Serb and Croatian Serb statelets. Vladimir Putin actually did formally annex Crimea. This moves things into a different dimension, I think.
And therefore, potentially, at least from the West's point of view, makes it more alarming rather than less alarming, because in Yugoslavia, NATO, you had the might of NATO backed by the United States dealing with a relatively small country, whereas here we're up against Russia, one of the largest economies in the world still, nuclear power, a member of the UN Security Council, and therefore a much more difficult country to impose your will on.
I think that is a very important point. If one casts one's mind back to 1995, it was really the NATO intervention on behalf of the Bosnian Muslims after the massacre at Srebrenica and the US arming of the Croatian military that tilted the balance of the war against Milosevic and really forced him to the peace table. I think that sort of intervention in the case of Ukraine by NATO or the US is just not plausible.
The other parallel, or maybe not, but something that certainly gives pause for thought is, of course, when the whole Balkan situation started unraveling in the early 90s, we didn't really know. We were in for almost a decade of this. And I think as people look to Ukraine now, they keep thinking, well, when are they going to resolve this? Presumably, this will be over in the next few weeks, or the situation will settle down in some way. Do you think it's possible that we're in for a kind of Balkan-style decade of instability with Ukraine, or do you think it's more likely that, for better or worse, this will get sorted out in the next year?
I wouldn't expect it to be resolved quickly. One reason is that the annexation of Crimea, I think, did move the whole nature of the problem into a much more serious dimension. And I also think that the importance geopolitically and emotionally of Ukraine to the Russian state is a very different thing from what one saw in the Balkans in the mid-1990s, and therefore it would appear that Vladimir Putin is out to play this for the long run, and so if he continues to occupy the presidency as he can until 2024, there are certainly good reasons to think that the problem won't die away between now and then.
Tony Barber, thank you very much for that sobering reflection. That's it for now.